If anybody recognizes the song that I'm very poorly attempting to do the rhythm to, I'd be curious if chat knows that song. I'd be kind of impressed. I'm late. Hey man, it's 6 p.m. where I'm at still, according to my computadora. Alright, we'll do the usual. We'll babble a little bit before getting on topic, let folks get in here. It is a nice summer day, so, you know, people are probably out, like, doing productive things. Not watching some random fish live stream, but for those of you who maybe you're at the end of your day, you're on East Coast time or something like that, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Oh, man, what can we talk about? So we're finally past all of the stuff that I filmed at Triple Crown. So we'll be getting back to kind of normal videos starting this week. I actually have to, like, do all the editing and stuff for this week's video. I've been slightly behind. A little bit. Just, you know, stuff comes up. You have to do a bunch of... It's time to catch up on doctor's appointments or whatever. You start changing your schedule around and work late at night and not on YouTube stuff. So, yeah, it's like probably my next 2 days is doing video editing. It's one of my next 2 nights. Sounds about right. We have FishTuber coming up in, a month? I mean, really not very long from now. I'm looking forward to, specifically just because Bob Steenfott and I have been talking a bunch through super secret channels. I don't necessarily want to, like, say where I talk, because then people might think that, like, I'm actively in that area, in which I'm really not. But it was one of those things where I got a ping and, like, it happened to recognize it. But yeah. Bob and I have been talking a bunch about, like, kind of his plans and some other stuff, and looking forward to just sitting down in person with Bob and babbling a bit, because we both kind of want to see some more, I guess you would say, like, Northwestern events, and more like swap meet type stuff, right? Because you got awesome stuff like the Greater Chicago Cichlid Association. Seattle, geez. I'm thinking my own club. Brains out the window. Right, they have their amazing swap. Keystone Clash kind of has a cool, like, swap thing and vendor room going to it. A lot of your smaller conventions, like Triple Crown, had this amazing kind of swap-esque thing happen at it, where there's, like, and I think you guys saw the footage from it, where it's like a hall full of tables and all sorts of people putting up their own, like, miniature vendor table, and there were tons of people just, like, selling fish out of their hotel rooms and stuff. And those are the things in, like, conventions that I think are super cool. Not because, like, I'm there to buy fish necessarily, but more just, like, I like seeing those events because it encourages more and more people to try some different fish maybe they haven't tried before, get some stuff that maybe they can't normally get in their area, and just eventually, like, participate in that kind of stuff. Like, you guys know from the Plants for Profit series, I am a huge advocate, if you're a plant grower, of if you have any swaps, go to them, get a table, it's worth it. You can do amazing at swaps. And, like, I might even, I still have to talk to Kenny of Danikin Aquatics. I might even get myself a table at FishTuber just to sell a bunch of my plants. Because I have a bunch of stuff that I can sell right now, especially Java Fern. And I've kind of been, like, pondering those things, you know, but at the same time, I kind of just want to go have fun, and babble and film and all those kind of things. So, if that isn't obvious, like, totally looking forward to, FishTuberfest, just because for those of you who can make it that are in the Northwest, I know some of you can't, like Johnny at Dance Fish is like, it's too soon, I'd like to go, but I can't. You know, it's such a great opportunity, especially now that it's 2 days, to just sit down and babble. like Bob said, he was almost pondering getting like a second table, and he was getting a table just so he had a place to sit. And that's actually one of the things I'm pondering is getting myself a table just so I have a permanent kind of base camp, right? So that if I just want to like sit and babble with people, I've just got a table where you can just come hang out, right? I've thought that's actually been in my head. But yeah. Okay. So that's kind of like some stuff in my head. We're trying to figure out something about like some kind of swap, because there used to be some that were sponsored by small groups, or one used to be by the North Sound Aquarium Society out here. But yeah, we don't have really any swaps anymore. We do have the 2 auctions that the Greater Seattle Aquarium Society runs, but those aren't swaps. And I think there's a big difference between an auction and a swap as far as just the feeling, whether you're a vendor or not. Like, I've had kind of both experiences, going to them and getting to ask people questions about the stuff they're selling, or just talk with some of your friends that you run into while you're there, versus being the vendor and like talking to people and trying to explain like why I think this plant is really underappreciated, or why, based on talking to you really briefly about your tank, why like I wouldn't go with this plant, but I would totally try this one because you're trying to do X, Y, and Z. All those kind of things. Like that's the fun part for me about swaps, is like there's a lot of just, you get to nerd out is really what it comes down to. You get to really nerd out. And maybe, just maybe, make a little money while you're there, or spend a little money and get yourself some sweet stuff. It's the best part about swaps. Okay, we'll get on topic. Now, before, I know I've babbled for like 6 minutes about random stuff. Before I dig in here, we usually kind of do a devil's advocate to everything. So if I have a certain opinion, I will always argue the opposite opinion. And I don't feel like this topic has that kind of option. But I want to be really clear. In no way am I trying to say anything negative about any fish creators. I might mention some, and when I say small channels, I mean myself too. I'm definitely not a large channel. Anything that is sub basically 100,000 subscribers is a small channel in the grand scheme of YouTube. Now, in the scheme of fish, probably anything under 50,000 is still a small channel, right? You start hitting like 50,000, that's pretty big for fish. But I think it's really important that we get these things out of the way, because there are some creators who are here with me, right? Like Fish Room Fever's here. I saw Tom from TM Aquatics. In some regards, Johnny from Dan's Fish, right? We've got great people here. And to be very clear, I love a ton of you people. There's very few people in the fish community that are like not cool. Very, very few. And I think that's one of the best parts about our community. But keep in mind that like there's sort of interesting stuff that I think leads to this. And part of it is us as viewers of content, not necessarily the content creators themselves. So let me dig into some of this stuff. Why some fish tubers, myself included most likely, will always be small channels. And I kind of coined this the dirty secret of FishTube. For a lot of your larger channels, and again, this is not a negative, it's just it's an understood fact. And I've talked to a lot of these people and had some very interesting conversations in this regard. In order to get the larger growth that you see on some of the larger channels out there, think like Corey Aquarium Co-op, that whole group there, right? Or KG Tropicals, John and Lisa, they fall into like one of the 2 categories that I think that for freshwater does really well for big growth, which is a huge focus on beginner-friendly content. And that usually means a lot of people who might only be having their like first, maybe second fish tank. Folks that are typically in the hobby maybe less than a year, right? So they used to have a lot to learn. And often they might not even have anything that they've really like latched onto yet. You know, a lot of us hobbyists, it takes a while before we kind of find that niche inside this already small hobby that is our thing. You know, me with rainbow fish. My friend Mike from the Fish Tank Barn, right? He's really big on his, like, Gudeids, for example. You know, Tom from TM Aquatics, he's a catfish guy. Plecos and Corydoras, he's got a million billion of them, and they're all amazing. And if you listen to him talk about those, or me talk about rainbow fish, or Mike talk about Gudeids, etc., the people who've, like, found their niche, you hear that passion in their voice, right? You can just hear they love this stuff, and almost nothing else matters in a weird way. Right? And that's fantastic. That's part of the appeal of watching some of those channels. You know, you've got people who, like James from Fish Room Fever, who actively goes out and helps organize events and does all sorts of stuff in order to kind of keep growing the fun social part of this hobby, especially with the power of the internet that allows that to occur. You don't see that very often in your big channels. They might have those things. Like, we all know that Corey from Aquarium Co-op loves live bearers. We know that John from KG Tropicals is really into African cichlids. But it's not like watching my videos where you see like 90% of them are either rainbow fish or plants, right? You know, something like that. It's very broad spectrum content that is designed to help our new aquarists. And it may or may not also contain kind of exaggerated titles, right? These are the things that are to grip our eyes. And it's not to say that small YouTubers don't do this on occasion too. I have some that are like that. Don't get me wrong. I think that this live stream's title is probably there to grab a little attention, but it's also kind of relevant. Now you look at a small creator, right? And very frequently, a lot of us small creators, and not all, but a lot of us, find that thing that we don't feel anyone else in Fish Fam is doing that is unique to us. And we zero in on that. And that's fantastic because it's our passion. It's something we love. Let me give you an example of something that I think is really unique in the fish hobby. Danny, Glassbox Hero, right? He does parody songs, parody rock songs. Kind of like how Stephen P. Aquatics does his own kind of like fish-related songs too, right? These are things that are unique and special to their channels. Kind of like how if you can kind of assume Bentley's either talking about the good and bad of a product, plants or rainbow fish. You can go to those channels and know that at some point you're going to have some kind of fun, usually comedic, musical content that appeals to us fish nerds. But the difference is a lot of us small channels, we narrow in and we stay to those things because a lot of this is about our hobby, and we're not running businesses necessarily. So even as like we might get some audience, you could look at a channel like Secret History Alex, right? Living Inside Your Aquarium, myself, where we're starting to get close to like 20,000 subscribers, or maybe have surpassed it in the case of Alex. We're probably not at a point where we can go really all in. We probably still have to hold some other kind of job or do some other thing that keeps us grounded, and this is still kind of our hobby. And our channels probably aren't making enough to look at like pulling the level of like hiring some awesome editor like Jimmy, right? And I love Jimmy to death. You know, I wish I could afford someone as amazing as Jimmy, but that's not in the cards. So often, we already have all these other things that take away some of our time that make it so that we can only produce things to a certain level. So that will very frequently cause us to continue to stay in the wheelhouse of the things that we love the most, right? Because then it's still passion and it's still fun. It's not a job. It's not a grind, you know, those kind of things, right? And I think that's part of what's not understood is that even clickbaity titles and over the top, like the face on the stupid thumbnail, those things grab the attention of a lot of people who may not be as deep into the hobby, right? A lot of your newer aquarists are going to pay attention to that stuff that's more broad spectrum. Your top 10 lists, your top 5 lists, here's the most basic level thing, and that inherently helps also feed that algorithm some, right? Because the algorithm pays attention to a lot of stuff. This is my lady in chat talking about my thumbnail artist. If you see any thumbnail that actually looks cool, it's because my significant other did it. Everything else is usually like some kind of screen grab or something very generic. That's when you know I did it. But if it looks neat or artsy in any way, it was her. But part of the thing is, the other thing, and let me stop myself for a second. One of the reasons why I'm really talking about this, and this is not like necessarily a fish topic, but it kind of is, right? I saw this question or comments around this a ton in the last like 3 weeks or so, which was, we had like the interviews of all the creators. Well, not all, but a good majority of the creators who were present at Triple Crown talking about their dream fish, or just sitting and babbling with Chris, the Mad Aquarist, who's in chat. Good to see you, buddy. Or the most recent video with Daniel Convetterline, where we're talking about basically how Plecos are super ninjas and can use grappling hooks built into their face to grab onto surfaces while also eating algae off that surface and moving along it, right? All these like crazy, amazing things. You get this level of content that tends to be passion forward, so it goes a little deeper, right? You can find all sorts of super interesting information from folks like Tom in chat about Plecos and Corydoras. You can learn a ton about them that you probably didn't know you needed to know from someone like him. But that deeper knowledge usually doesn't start mattering until we've been in the hobby for a while, right? When you're starting off in the hobby, you don't need to know like the intricacies of breeding a Hypancistrus Pleco. You probably just want to know the basics on how to keep a bristlenose Pleco healthy, right? And those are the things that a lot of your larger YouTube channels do very well. Now, there's a second category in freshwater that I want to address as far as that tends to do very well for growth. But I think most of us more dedicated hobbyists, in the sense of those folks like myself who are really dug into kind of a specific type of fish, will never do. And that's your like aquascaping channels. So Green Aqua, MD Fish Tanks, a lot of these folks, you're not digging in and seeing like a new aquascape every week. Because most of us are keeping tanks going, whether it's for the purpose of breeding fish or just keeping fish, for years at a time. Where in the case of a lot of those channels, a tank's only put together for like 2 to 3 minutes, or 3 minutes, months. Jeez, 2 to 3 minutes, tear the tank down. It'd take longer to put the tank together than that. Whew. But you're seeing tanks that are, it's about kind of the artistic side of things, right? And that grabs a lot of attention. Aquascaping is extremely popular in the freshwater side of the hobby. And seeing people who are relatively talented at this, and or complete professionals at this, in the case of like your George Farmers, basically all the guys at Green Aqua, right? They established their store surrounding their capabilities there. And nowadays, I would argue that MD Fish Tanks is a professional at this, right? He does aquascape tanks every week as a part of his living. So when you dig in, the thing is, those kind of things that are constantly changing or really good for basics and getting real early ideas, which is where I think aquascaping is phenomenal and does very well. Aquascaping brings in people who are looking to gather ideas for maybe their own tank. And I think that's really cool. But that tends to be people who are not necessarily looking for that deeper educational level. That deeper educational level, honestly, and Tom has kind of mentioned this in chat, and Chris is kind of playing around it too, is not something that draws a lot of generic attention. It draws very focused attention. So someone like myself, who's a big rainbow fish fan, right? We might watch MD fish tanks because as Xanadudu is saying in chat, they're very fun. He's got a ton of energy. It's very vloggy, which is a thing that does very well on YouTube, right? In general, regardless of the type or genre of content, that does very well. He's just meshing it into the fish world. But we can watch some of the stuff that he's doing and see something interesting that might appeal to us in some shape or way. But it's more entertainment, right? A lot of our smaller channels tend to be more educationally focused. And that education focus is not the thing that grips a lot of attention. And often you're going to get, instead of like an 8-minute video that's really condensed, really quickly edited to show you something, because you don't need to go into depth and talk a lot, that gets a lot of attention. But if I were to take a video and teach you a lot about a specific species of rainbow fish or something like that, that's probably a 20-minute video, and you start diving really deep. And often our educational videos get longer. It's hard to keep them short. Otherwise, you have to have a ton of them. And then the deeper you go into a series, the more fall off occurs. So it almost inherently is self-punishing. But the thing is that most of us small creators, I'm sure there are some out here who won't agree with me, but I think most of us who have done it for 4 years or 3 years, or we know that after 6 or 7 years, we're still going to be doing this, right? Because it's fun. This is our fun. And that's the big thing. We do this because it's our hobby. It might be the nice dream, right, to have it be more than a hobby, but realistically, the YouTube side of our fish hobby is the hobby of our hobby. And that's why a lot of our smaller channels are going to stay in the smaller side over time. Because it's the approach we take. And that approach inherently draws a little less attention from the average person viewing a fish video on YouTube. And I think, for a lot of folks, maybe you're in chat, and somebody mentioned in chat how they were like just getting to over 100 subscribers, right? That's a conversation that I think is relevant to anyone who's like, I'm thinking about starting a channel. You need to have that conversation with yourself, because I had that conversation with myself years ago. When I was buying my first like real big boy camera instead of using my cell phone, because I wanted to increase the visual quality of what I was doing, I had to have a conversation with myself. Am I okay knowing that this cost is for my hobby and the likelihood of it being paid off in any relevant amount of time is extremely low? Right? Jason from Jadricon, it's good to see you, buddy. He mentioned something that one thing that a lot of us who do struggle with is that editing can be a pain. It is a bear. And for a lot of us, like, we don't want to edit videos. Or maybe we're just not as talented as some other people are. So it makes that editing process longer and harder. right? It takes much more time. Jeez. Uh, Chris, I don't think that's going to work for me. I'm definitely nowhere near as attractive as Janet Jackson. But I think that's one of the things that if you are aspiring to do YouTube, outside of if you owned a store and you were specifically trying to do it to give yourself some level of maybe customer insights into how your store works, or how using it as some kind of marketing wing in some way, shape, or form, you kind of have to have that conversation with yourself. Is this fun enough to me that I know I'm willing to keep doing it? And that's the important one. Because if your goal is, I'm going to make money on YouTube, I can tell you as someone who has done like fish YouTube for 5 years, your dollar value per hour is excessively low. You would be far more better off either focusing on growing plants and breeding fish and selling them at a local club or to a local store, or I don't know, getting a second job, being an Uber driver. Like, there's a ton of things that will make you more money if your goal is to make money. But if this is fun for you, that is what matters. Because as a small channel, often, this is our fun. Now, some channels do very well. They blow up. They do fantastic. They can do much, much more, right? And you're going to see those every once in a while. And like Omar, who owns the store, just said, not actually for marketing purposes, but his purpose would be for the love of the hobby, to put information out there from his store. And that's also great, right? Because sometimes it's insights from store owners. Like, you can think about Aquarium Co-op started off, they used to have the day in the life of the fish store. And that was like the super early content that Corey put out well before he ever hit like 50,000 subscribers. And that kind of stuff is really cool to see, because it gives us normal hobbyists insights into what it's like running a fish store and some of the quirky things and the interesting things, right? But yeah. So, there's my little dirty secret of FishTube. Is that in the end, and sometimes, by the way, the other answer is there are stubborn people like me who refuse to do a clickbaity title on every stupid video, do the dumb thumbnail with the stupid face, and more importantly, can't stand top 10 videos and refuse to do them. Because it's just not fun, right? There's a lot of stuff that works very well for if you're trying to do channel growth. But a lot of times, for those of us who are super deep into this hobby, that's not the reason we do FishTube. Did I just accuse fish keepers of being normal? You're my normal. I'm a fish keeper. So normal to me is different than normal, right? There's no normal. Everybody's some flavor of weird. We're just all fish weird. And that's perfectly okay. Because that's my kind of weird, right? My kind of weird is fish weird. But I'm also like video game weird and sports weird and car weird, and I'm a lot of weird. I'm very weird. All right. So that's my thing. We'll jam into questions now, guys. Thank you for enjoying my dive into this. I think chat had some really cool stuff, conversation. So chat, good on you. We'll dig into questions, because I think there's a lot of stuff that is not necessarily related to FishTube that is good stuff to answer, and I'll do my best to answer it. I'm going to dig up a little bit. Okay, I'll start with this one just because it's probably easy for me. First class fish. Quick question. Since you know the aqua sky well, I have one over a tote about 7 inches above the water. Water is 6 inches deep. Most plants are floating. What percentage for low light? So because they're basically all floating, there's no diffraction from the water, right? So if you're trying to stay low light, despite that 7-inch gap, I would say about 30% white. And then something like 20-25% red and green. And you could have a touch of blue, but you probably don't even need it, because you're not penetrating through the water at all, and that's what blue does best. So I hope that helps. Matthew Frey, if bacteria in your tank dies without oxygen, then how can I trust live bacteria bottles that you can? Oh, so, okay. So, good question. The cultures of bacteria that you get in a bottle, they do have an expiry date. They only last a certain period of time. However, trying to think of the exact way to describe this, because I know it's not perfect, because I am no scientist. I'm just a dummy on the internet. But the liquid that it's kept in basically keeps it in a form of suspension. And when it gets exposed to your aquarium, it becomes active. And a lot of it is just the stuff that is present helps kickstart that bacterial process. It isn't just like purely liquid bacteria, if that makes sense. This is an easy way to think about it. This is not scientifically accurate, but this is the way to think about it so that you understand the difference between the product and a oxygen-rich environment where a specific type of beneficial bacteriums live. And it's, well, specific types of beneficial bacteriums. Not just one. There's several, right? Because there's a different bacteria that eat the ammonia versus turn the nitrite into the nitrate. They're all different types of bacteria. However, a lot of those are easiest to propagate and establish in aerobic environments, so oxygen-rich environments. That's where we get into the argument about all the different filtration types and blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to go that deep. But basically, think of it like... think of it like the kickstart to basically speeding up the process of establishing that bacteria. It's kind of like inside the Echo Complete bag, you've got that liquid bacterium kickstarter. Don't think of it as a live bacteria culture. Just think of it like a kickstarter that speeds that process up. So instead of taking weeks, it takes days, if that makes sense. It's a little easier to think of it that way, and this is the non-sciencey way to explain it, so that you're just kind of like, got it, know what I'm doing, as opposed to like, let's get my whiteboard out here and explain it all. I can't go that deep. So you need like somebody from Fritz Aquatics or one of those companies that actually like builds those things to really break down how the heck they function. I'm not that person. I barely ever use those products, to be honest. I've tried a bunch of them, and every time I'm just like, if I bring in live plants, they usually have bacteria on them, and it builds up, and I just wait longer. It's just the way I am. Chris, do you want the detailed discussions with Daniel Convetterline links? I thought I linked them both. Did I only link one? I have to go back and edit them. I do have the two links because I kept them open on purpose. I think I forgot to add them in the description, but I did link specifically to part 1 in the video with your conversation with him. But I think I need to go adjust the description. So thanks for the reminder, Chris, because I'm pretty certain I forgot to do that. That's what happens. Digging through comment stuff, because I want to make sure I get these questions. Omar, I think we need more aquatic biotopes and aquascaping channels. So, I don't necessarily think we need more aquascaping channels. To be firing shots, because there are quite a few of them. I would love to see people that actually did, and Chris Biggs is one of those people who will be doing this, deeper biotope explanations and setups. You don't really see proper biotope related content. There's plenty of aquascaping out there from more casual aquascapers who are like, there's a bunch of smaller channels that do aquascaping, all the way up to like your folks like MD Fish Tanks, George Farmer, Erie's, the guys at Green Aqua. You've got some like really heavy hitters in that scene that have channels and are constantly doing stuff. So I don't necessarily think you need more. We've lost some of the really cool ones that were out there. Literally, the channel that brought me back to this hobby hasn't posted a video in, I think, 3 years. Maybe it's 4 now. That's the Green Machine, which was a store in the UK, and I think they still exist. But I haven't seen a video out of them in ages. Adele just caught the interview about Plecos from Triple Crown this afternoon. Really interesting. Guess I never thought too hard on the mechanics of it. Yeah, Daniel Convetterline is a super interesting dude. And the fact that the, like, assumed or known knowledge, he just decided, now I'm going to challenge that and go really look into this is very fascinating. And I highly encourage you, on Chris Biggs's channel, the Mad Aquarist. He has a 2-part interview with Daniel that is way more detailed and super interesting. I highly, highly encourage you to watch it. Let me see. Do I actually have one of those windows open? I don't, but I will link them to you because I like them a lot, and I've watched them, and I think you guys might like them if you liked Daniel, because he's a fascinating dude. And Chris is slightly more tame in those videos. Let's see here. Search your channel. Bonk, bonk. Oh, killing me. So here's the first one. So there's part 1 here. And then let me grab you part 2. Oh, YouTube. Why do you do these things? I know you're trying to remember, like, where I left off, but when it's the last, like, 30 seconds of a video, I probably don't need that, like, reminder. Okay, so there's those if you're interested. They're super fun. At least if you're, like, a crazy nerd like me, they are. Okay, and if for some reason I missed your question, I'm trying to dig up in chat, but I can only dig up so far and so easily. Feel free to repost it at Bentley Pasco. It makes it super easy for me to see stuff. And I will do them answering thingies. Oh, jeez. Bob, what are you trying to get me in trouble, man? I see what you're up to. I see what you're up to. Jimmy P's Aquariums. I'm a small channel because you have not subscribed to me. Oh, no. Okay. So, a couple questions I have to answer. Oh, man. We've got some editing software questions. We can probably get into that. I'll start with Mike Standby as just a comment, but I like it a lot. As a person who breeds some rare and oddball rainbow fish, I make videos so I can show fish to people who are new to the rainbow fish. I can see what that silver fish grows into. Yeah, I totally appreciate that, dude. Like, you're breeding some stuff, which, by the way, Mike, you and I are going to talk, because whenever I can get the garage done, I'm going to need some fish from you. Which means I'm going to have to send you some money. But we were talking at Triple Crown. I know you got some fish lying around I could buy. All right. Let's see here. Greg Jones. A few years ago, I realized the channels that get big make videos for viewer entertainment, while those that stay small make videos for themselves. Often very different content. Yeah, I think, Greg, you've literally put it far better than I did in like 20 minutes of talking in a singular sentence. Maybe you should be the YouTuber. I'm apparently terrible at this. That one statement sums up 20 minutes of me babbling like a dum-dum. But it's perfect, right? Often, viewer entertainment versus deeper levels of education that usually are the things that we're really into, right? That's doing stuff for ourselves. That's a very good definitive line. Very good. Kudos to you, sir. Omar, I've learned quite a bit over the years, mostly from the previous owner of the store, with 39 plus years of owning a pet shop, genuinely caring for the health and well-being of my fish. Yeah, I mean, that kind of knowledge is indispensable, and it's so hard to get a lot of that stuff out into the ether that is the internet, right? You've got younger folks. He's like, you're talking 39 plus years of owning a pet shop. Well, that's my lifespan, basically put, right? Like, I was born in the early 80s, so you do the math there, right? It's basically as long as I've been alive, that person had owned a pet shop and done fish. So, clearly, there are some lessons there. All right, Bob Purcell, first one that's going to get me in trouble. Do you have an update on your Master Aquatic Horticulturist app? Killing me. Technically, no, but sort of yes. Yes is that the dev, who's a friend of mine and I used to work with him, that I'm trying to work with, we're trying to resolve some problems with our Azure cloud service that we have for doing our storage. Once that gets resolved, we can try to get back to development work, but both of us work a ton, and right now he works more than I do. So I work slightly less now than I used to at my previous job, but I still work a good amount. He works as much, if not more, because he's the crazy person that will come into work at 5 a.m. and not leave until 6 p.m. And that's because I kicked him out the door when I was working there. But now that I'm not working there anymore, he will stay later. So, he's a lot like me. He's kind of a workaholic. He's only got so much time, and he's got kids and a wife, and we only get so much time. And he's got a couple different projects that he's working on. So it's going to be slow. That's why I kind of don't have a date. I don't have a target. Would I love to have one and be like, I would like to target this? Absolutely. But I don't want to put that out there because I just have learned enough lessons from like putting my foot in my mouth at this point or having problems occur that it's just one of those things where it's like when I get a reasonable update, I'll put it out there. But we have some great features in mind. It's just a matter of getting them built and just having the time to get them built. First class fish. I saw a recent university study that most filters end up with way more archaea than bacteria. So end up with no bacteria. It was very interesting. The products still work to start things. I guess I'm not like that deep into scientific studies, so I would have to know what the heck that is. Now I've got something I have to look up. You're just going to huck this in a Google window and read it later tonight before I start anything else. A type of single-cell organism. Interesting. Now I'm going to finally learn something. Jeez. Trying to make me do the science things. Wei Wang, can anyone see these words? Yes. I think you asked something about African cichlids earlier, right? Feel free to repost your question. I'm not an African cichlid guy, but I'll try to answer it. Screaming Fly Productions. I rescue bladder snails when I thin out my plants. I'm a weirdo for sure. Okay, now here's the other one Bob wants to get me in trouble with. Do you consider Camp Kennan as doing aquascaping? So, I really haven't watched many Camp Kennan videos. Mostly because he is not appealing to me at all. But it's because a lot of the stuff that would be really interesting, about the only thing that's interesting in what he has is the large land tortoises to me, because they think they're fascinating creatures. But just a lot of the stuff that he's doing is not up my alley. So I really don't watch any of his content. I'm sure it probably is. He's a kind of large channel, but at the same time, like, am I going to watch Camp Kennan for aquascaping, or am I going to go watch, like, Green Aqua or George Farmer? I'm going to watch Green Aqua or George Farmer. Or I'll watch MD Fish Tanks, just because, as has been said multiple times, the dude's entertaining. He's fun. He's got great energy. Like, I've commented on a number of his videos. He's very nice about responding. He just seems like a genuinely awesome dude. Like, I would love to sit down and just shoot the breeze with that guy, because he just seems fun. Oh, that's one. Do plecos eat cryptocorines? Not necessarily, but they can if they're not being fed enough. So if you're thinking like, oh, they're just going to eat all the algae in my tank and I don't have to actively feed my plecos, they will eat your plants. Especially if you have sword plants. Plecos love sword plants. But if you're feeding your plecos, no, they're going to leave your plants alone. They might take some of the surface, like, biofilm off of it or little bits of algae that might be there that you might not necessarily see when they're sitting there rasping, right? But they're usually not going to physically eat the plant if they're being well fed. Richie Collins, anyone have any thoughts on feeding Bozeman rainbows frozen beef heart? Don't. And let me explain. While rainbows do benefit from protein-rich foods, they don't need something that protein-rich. Usually, rainbows are better off eating things like Daphnia or brine shrimp, even cyclops, something that is a type of microcrustacean, because it has other nutrients to it beyond just the pure protein and like iron that are very good for rainbows in general. Plus, rainbows have very small throats, so depending on who makes your frozen beef heart, it might actually be hard for them to swallow that easily and process it. Whereas all the microcrustaceans, well, that's the kind of stuff they eat in the wild anyway, or like insect-based stuff, right? So in general, I would not be feeding frozen beef heart to any of my rainbow fish, period, regardless of which kind of rainbow it was. I would save that for more of your classic, more carnivorous fish. You start getting some of your larger, more aggressive South American or Central American cichlids, that kind of stuff. I would not do that with rainbows, personally. If you are, make sure you feed a very heavy, like, vegetable food to follow it up, because they can deal with constipation if you feed them too protein intense a diet. That's why I live by extreme community crave, because it's about the right mix of stuff to make sure I don't have any constipation issues in my fish. Oh, there's a Chad jump. That's how you know old Bentley's way behind. Woo! Play catch up. Danny to Glassbox Hero, I'm very, very interested in what your next parody song is. I'm just gonna put that out there whenever you do one. I'm curious what route you're going. Melitania versus Pseudomagilla versus Chilatharina. They're all very different genuses. One is like an entirely different species tree of fish. So Pseudomagills, right? Technically not rainbow fish. We just kind of lump them in. Those are your blue eyes, right? Those are all your tiny guys. Now, Melitania, Chilatharina, and then Glossolepis, those are your three primary rainbow fish. There are some other... my brain is not functioning right now, but there are some other ones that have very small numbers of species within that genus. But the primary three genus are Melitania, Chilatharina, and Glossolepis. Chilatharinas almost exclusively live in stream and river systems and tend to like faster water. You don't necessarily have to have fast water, but that's where they tend to find themselves. You're going to find the Chilatharinas, and this is very interesting. I learned this more recently in depth from Johannes Graf, in the central channel of a stream where the flow is at... Wait for it. There we go. It came back. Sorry. My broadcasting software just had a brain fart. So Chilatharina stay toward the center of the stream where there's much more flow, and they're very stream and river oriented fish. Well, they're mostly streams. You don't really have a lot of rivers per se that rainbow fish live in. It's mostly stream systems. Melitania are more commonly found in either the shallower parts of the stream, toward the edges, if it's a deeper stream, or just live in shallow pools and some of the lakes, the deeper lakes that are out there. So Melanitania, if you were to have like a good stream system, you would find Melanitania toward the banks near some of the overhanging foliage, and you would find Chalatherina in the center where the water flow is much more intense. Think of Chalatherina as a little more trout-like, right? They like that flow. They've got that longer, more narrow body that's built for a lot of speed. They're very fast fish. Where Melanitania, you get a lot more height out of them. You got a lot more broad body. So they've got a little bit more oomph to them. And there's quite a lot more Melanitania. And you'll see them in typically bigger water systems, with some exceptions. And then Glossolepis, this is where it gets very interesting. Glossolepis are basically exclusively kind of lake fish. And that's where you tend to see those longer finnages. They get that real big kind of like the humpback look is way more prevalent in Glossolepis than it is in any of the other types of fish as far as the rainbow fish are concerned. So they all kind of come from slightly different environments, even though they're all from the same area. But because each one is a different genus, there's very specific things to them. They'll all live in harmony, and in captivity, they'll all breed with each other because they're dumb and they don't discriminate. They love everybody who's a rainbow fish, except for like a Melanitania is not going to crossbreed with a Pseudomygil, but Melanitania, Chalatherina, and Glossolepis, they'll all crossbreed. They just love everybody. This is a big love pit. The boys aren't that smart, but dang, are they pretty. Let's see here. I'm going to try to catch up on chat. So if I don't see an at Billy Pasco, you might get skipped. So make sure you use those things. Oh, I want to say this one, though. Stacey mentioned that cancer made me realize time is too important. If it doesn't make me happy or money, save me time, it gets cut. I can totally understand that. You know, there's a lot of things in my life that I've made adjustments to that no longer are kind of the things I find fun, even though I loved them when I was younger. So an example would be like I used to do miniature wargaming, a game called Warhammer. I used to love it. An average game is like 3 hours. I used to run like weekly leagues and stuff like that. It's very expensive to play, for one. It takes a lot of time, for two. And it's just not my jam anymore. And a lot of it is because of the amount of time it takes. I would much rather, if I'm going to spend 3 hours doing something, I would rather spend a couple hours here at home, spending time with my lady or the dogs, and then like an hour with my fish tanks, than I would going out and playing 3 hours of, you know, little army men shooting each other, right? Shooting each other in big quotation marks, rolling dice to do that. And part of that is just, over time, we find those things that gravitate toward us, and they make us happier. Or maybe they're less, like, stressful when things don't go your way, whatever it may be. Like, in certain games are like, you know, certain types of games are just more stressful, where other games are way more enjoyable for whoever you are if you're a gamer, right? And you just tend to gravitate toward those ones that aren't as stressful. Unless that's, like, your jam is just being frustrated at all times, which sometimes I feel like that's some of my friends. But I think especially that, like, you know, my mom dealt with cancer for a while, and thankfully she was able to beat it. And it's one of the things too where when we spend time together, that time is very precious. I will drop all sorts of things for my mom because I know that she's gone through a lot. I was there for a bunch of it, and time is precious. Time is absolutely precious. There's also the other thing that I think is kind of magical about being a creator is appreciating other people's time, because no matter how much time it takes me to make a video, you folks spend infinitely more combined time. So the fact that you give me your time is something very precious to me, which is why I do, you know, instead of trying to like sell merch, I make it and give it away. Speaking of, I finally got all my hats in. I think I have 2 I can give away, if I remember right. Maybe it's 3. It's not a lot. I have to look again. I've got a box over there that finally came in with my stuff. So, like, I got one of the things I'm very happy that showed up, because I saw her in chat. I got this sweet fish room towel that's been on my desk for a little bit. and has some corgi hair on it. From Science Gal Aquatics. Carrie, I saw you. I love that towel. Might use it as the base for whatever one I make. Just because I like the general quality of the towel you chose. I do like it. Alright, let me see here. Boop, boop, boop. Johnny at Dan's Fish. 40k or fantasy? I played both at different times. So I played 40k from 2nd edition through 6th edition. I did not play very much 3rd edition, but I did play a tiny bit of it. I played Warhammer Fantasy from 3rd to 5th. The time I liked it is what we used to refer to as Hero Hammer. So if you are deep enough in that hobby to know what Hero Hammer means, then you know the era of fantasy I liked playing fantasy. But for the most part, I prefer 40k. I actually sold like every single one. Well, that's not true. I sold like 99% of my miniatures. I kept very few things. And the only things I kept had absolutely specific sentimental value. One of which is on my desk, but it's out of reach right now. So otherwise, I would show you. Xanadu. I call Pseudo McGill's pseudo rainbows to have a middle of the road term, and my Melitated Kalitawa only want frozen live foods. Well, yeah, if you're gonna give them like the candy bar equivalent when it comes to taste compared to your average stuff, of course they're gonna like that. Why wouldn't you like? Or actually, I think it's more accurate to call that like the high quality steak, or that like very fancy the fancier protein oriented meal versus like just a bag of potato chips. But ain't nothing wrong with potato chips every once in a while. I've taught my fish that when they get the live or frozen stuff, it's a treat, and to enjoy it, and they go hog wild for it when I do. Nabokov fan, I have 2 clown Plecos from a big box store, and one was definitely better genes than the other based on coloration and pattern. How is your experience with common clown Plecos? Enjoy. Enjoy with a question mark. Like, enjoy? There we go. Let's read the line correctly, Bentley. Jeez. You did radio. You should know this nonsense. So I've not kept clown Plecos yet. My Pleco keeping is like really narrow, and a lot of that is just because of the amount of room I have, right? I only have so much room. So I just don't keep a ton of Plecos. But I do like clown Plecos. I think they're very interesting. They're probably not something that would be in my arsenal of Plecos if we were to look at like when I had the space. But I'm very narrow. There's kind of like only 3 Plecos I super care about, maybe 4. I get 4 counts like the super red, like standard bristlenose. And that's just because I have them and they're really effective fish. But it's like the Wabenmooster Pleco. Love that guy. Favorite Ancistrus. Zebra Pleco, for obvious reasons. I love zebra Plecos. I lost my colony. I want to be able to do them again. And then finally, I really like the L397, but there's also the... Is that a 393? Maybe it is the 393. There's the alternate version of it that as the males get older into their adult size, they don't lose as much of the color definition in that orange. I'm sure if Tom's still here, he could correct me because he knows the right one. Because I've talked to him about them. But those are kind of like the Plecos I have in my sights for when I have space to do them. I don't know. I'm like, when it's not rainbow fish, I like super specific taste. I mean, look at my guppies, right? I have 1 species of guppy. 1. And I like guppies, but I only need the 1. And then maybe if I eventually find the second one I'm looking for, I'll have 2. But that's it. So, like, you get outside of rainbows and I get like hyper specific. Like, there's only one kind of angelfish I'm probably ever going to keep, and that's Leopoldi, because I love the Leopoldis. And maybe like the Manakapuru red shoulders, but I'm not trying to go too deep on angels. I need more room for rainbows, man. I'm that crazy. That's how I am. However, in general, what I will say is this. You will get more dominant males, right? that come from the same batch, and they're just going to look better. And if both happen to be male, or one's female and one's male, you're going to see different coloration and body size and all those kind of things, right? Especially if it's both the same gender, one is going to be the more dominant fish. And the more dominant fish is going to express better color, usually have a little bit better body size, all those kind of things. Because it happens with a lot of fish, not just plecos. And I'm sure someone can correct me and be like, no, Bentley, you're wrong. But that's just my personal observations. Like keeping my Wabbenweister plecos, they come from the same breeder. And I know the line is super good. And there is a distinct difference between the dominant male in the tank and the subdominant male. The color is just way better on the dominant male. He's more out and about. The other guy hides a lot more. He's a little bit smaller because he waits longer to go get his food. All those little things, right? They both come from a great breeder, and they're a great line. But I see those in even really good plecos. So I think you could see the same thing happen in your, common plecos, too. Just my thoughts. My thoughts, probably not perfect, but hey, my brain's crazy. Oh, Leo 209 Aquatic, Green Dragon or Snow White plecos. So my problem with the Green Dragon pleco is they're really not very green anymore. More and more of the Green Dragon plecos that I see are like a muddy brown with only like teeny tiny hints of green, that pale kind of pastel green color. And that's part of why I'm not as big on them. I would much rather have a Snow White if it's coming to a bristle nose. They're more interesting right now. I would actually probably be more likely, if you're going to go down that line, I would probably look at some of the different, some of the, the Blue Seam Starlight, so the L183 or something like that would be a little more up my alley. Just because they're such a different pattern and not like a monocolored fish. Also, I have a friend that breeds both Green Dragons and Snow Whites, so I kind of don't need to keep them. Hey, speak of Kenny. I was speaking of you earlier. Kenny, since you're here, thank you for the member super chat at 2 years now. Jeez, look at that. Give me a ring at some point, because I gotta, do the thing and the stuff. I have to give you money. Thank you, Tom. I see that. L306. L306. So not 393. 393 also looks really cool. I remember that fish. Because I remember that 93 and 97 in my head. It was like both of them being like, those are cool fish. But yeah. Yeah. Matthew Frey, thank you for the great answer. Hey, man. Happy to help. Hopefully my dumb ramblings help somebody out. Another good point. I wonder what other foods only make sense in bear tanks. So there's some very interesting things about bear tanks. One thing that I will say is anything that has kind of a barbel, you probably don't want to keep in a bear tank. And I learned this from some exceptionally smart Corridora keepers, aka mostly from Rob McClure, in that the bacteria layer that builds up on the bare glass is different than what will seep down into even a very thin layer of substrate. And that bacteria, even though they might not cut or injure their barbels, can get on the barbels and cause issues that lead to all sorts of problems. It's most prevalent in Corridoras, but could, in theory, also cause problems with the pleco. So, in general, try not to have bare bottom tanks, even though I keep my ancestors on a bare bottom tank right now. In time, that's going to change, though. Let's see here. We are at time, pretty much, so I'm going to do one or two more questions and readjust my chair because, yeah, I'm sliding off the dang thing. My office chair is starting to break. I have to get a new one. I've had it for, I think, 8 years now, so it's about time it gets a replacement. Let's see here. Where was the first question I wanted? There's kind of a question / comment that I wanted to answer. Where did it go? My brain. Man, did I just, like, lose it? I might have just lost it. Well, that's what happens. Bentley's scatterbrain comes out. Oh, there it is. Legion Aquatics. Why does my Pleco always hide? Come on. It's because they're cave dwellers and they're nocturnal. That's a big part of it. If you look, it's the channel's in Spanish, but there are some translations usually. I'm trying to remember the guy's name. There's a video that came out pretty recently where they find zebra plecos out in the wild after the dam has been built. Well, they only find like one. But they're going through this area on the rivers down there in the Amazon, and you can see like where all the plecos are hiding in these crevices of rock at all times. So they do that even in the wild. They hide naturally. It's part of what they are and how they live. It's like how shell dwellers will, pop in and out of shells and they engineer everything. Plecos just hide. That's what they do. You only see them like in mass in places they're basically not supposed to be. Like where the manatees naturally occur in Florida, right? That whole state park where there's like armies of common plecostomus that just like swim in big schools. They don't really do that in the wild. They spend a lot of time hiding in all sorts of like fallen driftwood and rocks and detritus and all this stuff. Like you look at their bodies are designed to hide in a lot of different environments for a majority of your plecos. So they're just doing what they've been doing for thousands of years, man. It's just they're doing it in a really tiny glass box instead of in this massive river. But eventually you can get them, certain ones are a little more ostentatious and come out and show themselves, or they just don't realize you're there, or maybe they realize that like, hey, that human person brings me food, so maybe they're not so bad. Maybe they're not a predator. Robert Johnson, thoughts on zucchini if it's not organic? Is it safe, or if I just peel off the skin? Oh, Fish from Fever, thank you. That's Leandro Sousa for that Pleco video I was talking about. Really cool channel. You will have to read subtitles, though. Oh, Scuba Steve's got a great question. So, I don't stress about organic, and here's my take on this. More and more, you will find issues that occur with organic produce. You're seeing a lot more issues of listeria, E. coli, all sorts of stuff. So if you would peel the skin off of a non-organic zucchini, you should probably peel the skin off of an organic zucchini. Realistically, I would just say give it a very thorough wash, and you're probably okay. But if you want to be extra paranoid about it, which I was doing for a while, peel them. Give them a quick blanch, because that's going to boil anything that's on them, right? Makes them safe. Also helps them sink. And yeah, you can wash them in tank water. If you don't have a lot of chlorine in your system, you can wash them in non-tank water. It's probably not going to be an issue. Don't stress too much. Just be thorough, and you'll be okay. Let's see here. All right, there's one other question I want to grab. Here goes. From Scuba Steve. O's Aquatics. What makes a good fish tuber in your opinion? So here's my thoughts. And this, you're going to make me go long on this because I'm probably going to ramble a bit, but I'll try and make it succinct and quick. A good fish tuber is someone who is passionate about the hobby, so passionate that they want to share that with other people, and choose to do so through the medium of YouTube. And then they offer something interesting. Whether that is the energy that they bring to their videos, whether that is something artistic, think like aquascaping, or like how Glassbox Hero does parody music, right? These are things that are different and artistic that get brought. They can be educational. You can have people that have just been in this hobby for a long time and really love fish, and they will teach you things. Master Breeder Dean is a great example of that. Chris Biggs, the Mad Aquarist who's here, is an example of that. You have people who are specialists, and these are the things that make you kind of unique. I want to be clear. Tom from TM Aquatics. This dum-dum right here who likes rainbow fish. That passion is typically more prevalent in your specialists. A good YouTuber doesn't care about their subscriber count. They care about making things that to them do something good. Whether that's educationally, entertainment-wise, or artistic. There's lots of spectrums to being a good fish tuber. There's plenty of bad fish tubers. There's folks that focus way too much on the metric of their views, pay too much attention to the negative comments that they might receive, where they'll see you could have 100 positive comments and only one negative, and your pure focus is that one negative, and you redirect all your energy in another video on that negative comment. Those are bad fish tubers. Because typically, they see the negatives in life. To me, good fish tubers are those people who love this hobby so much that they are willing to spend even more time for very little, eventually, or usually no money, talking about how much they love this hobby. I will occasionally get a negative comment, right? I get them relatively regularly, but I'll get one in 200-300 comments that are positive or are sharing their experience. And to be clear here, a bad comment isn't necessarily something that's critical of you. There's good constructive criticism that comes, and I value that when I receive it. But you'll get people who are like, just they'll say nothing to do with fish. They'll say all sorts of nasty stuff or whatever it may be. You're gonna get that. It's the internet. I'm sorry. But if you focus only on that one thing, and then you expend all your energy on that one thing instead of realizing that you have 300 other people who are working with you in a constructive fashion, whether they're showing appreciation or countering your view with their own personal experience, when you focus on that, that's what makes you a good YouTuber. Because it's those things that inspire you to keep doing new and better things, to continuously work and make not only the content you produce better, but your capability and your skill set in this hobby better. Those are good fish tubers. The people who are willing to expend tons of their time organizing fish events because they love fish events, James Fishroom Fever, good fish tuber. Stephen P. Aquatics, people who do stuff for fun, make little fun songs, do streams, and all that kind of stuff. Good FishTubers. Even the people that are phenomenally successful, MD Fish Tanks, Aquarium Co-op, Coral Fish 12G if you want to go on the saltwater side of life. These people have done phenomenally successful in YouTube. But if you look at them, for the most part, they are extremely positive-minded people that are trying to contribute something that they not only enjoy, but they think can bring in some level of enjoyment, whether that is educational, entertaining, what have you, to other people. Finally, my last thing, a true good FishTuber does this. And Nabokov fan has nailed it on the head. Good FishTubers not only talk to the viewer, but more importantly, appreciate the time given by other people. They don't see their audience as a way to make money. They see their audience as people who are honoring them with their time. Time is one of the most precious things in this world. And if you viewer who is watching right now, are willing to give me your time, that says something. You don't even have to be that person that comments. You don't have to be that person that I see constantly. Every person who is willing to give me their time, if I can't appreciate that and realize how important that is, I'm not a good FishTuber. And unfortunately, there are folks out there that cannot understand the value of other people's time. It's just unfortunate. So there you go. To me, that's what makes a good FishTuber. You don't have to be the most educational. You can be entertaining. You don't have to be entertaining. You could be educational. But as long as you love what you do, you see the absolutely amazing positivity of this community, and you appreciate the time given to you by everyone out there, you're doing it right. That's my little, heartwarming portion. I hope. So that being said, gang, Curtis St. Martin, thank you very much for the Keep It Up sticker. I really appreciate that. I was a little deep in my diatribe there, but thank you folks for your time tonight. As always, we'll be here next Tuesday. Video this Saturday, all the usual stuff. I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your week. Hopefully it is not too hot. We're dealing with another heat wave here in Seattle. But with that being said, thank you so much for watching. And stay awesome. Enjoy your good FishTubers.